Hello friends and greetings for the day. Welcome back to another tutorial on ISTQB Agile Tester certification. We are in chapter 1 talking about some of the sample questions from here, and today also we'll be continuing with it. Looking forward to see more questions from this chapter and try to see what best can be understood from here as well. The very first question we have is question number 10 for today. Which of the following items should not be raised during a retrospective meeting? Now, the first and foremost thing is the very common thing what people don't recognize is the word not. They quite easily skip that word because it becomes very easy to skip such small words and come to the subject that they are talking about, retrospective, but they sometimes don't concentrate on what exactly should not be, right? Because the word not right here in my slide deck, it is written in bold, but in the examination it might be written in the small form as well. That is lowercase. So it is very easy to skip that word, and people sometimes think that more than one answer is correct. And yes, that's absolutely true, because only one is wrong and you have to pick the wrong one. So you should be very, very careful in this particular context that if there is a word not, they're asking you otherwise not what exactly it should be. So they are asking you which of these items should not be raised during a retrospective. That means filter out the one which you should raise during retrospective, and the odd one out will be the right answer. Okay. So let's see what are the options we have with us. Option A says there should be more emphasis on unit testing in the future to improve overall quality. I think, yeah, that's one of the best options to be discussed about the retrospective. In the retrospective, we can talk about how to improve our efficiency and at the same time the defect detection. That means how can we prevent defects or identify defects earlier in the life cycle. So that's one of the things which is improving the overall process. Talking about option B, the build process is manual and takes too long. Research and implementation of an automated build framework should be done. Of course, minimizing time during the agile lifecycle is very, very important, and it helps us to fasten our work and improve the overall process as well. So yes, automating some of the manual tedious tasks could be one of the catch for our process improvement, and yes, it can be added during the retrospective. While moving on to the next one, that is C, the tester XYZ is struggling to find defects. Test design training is required for this resource. Now, that's a little awkward one because it's talking about a particular individual, okay, and not talking about the team. However, the retrospective meetings is not meant to single out an individual. We talk everything in a very combined approach that we are talking about the whole team. We're not just limited to an individual or pointing out an individual that this person is not up to the mark and something should be done about it. Though it looks very positive statement, but actually it's making a person out of the team, right? And we should remember that Agile is all about building a team, not like, highlighting someone out of the team. So the focus is all on the process and the team as a whole, not as a particular individual. So looks a little weird one, but let's check out the D as well. Automated regression test suites are taking too long to run. A review of tests to eliminate redundant or unnecessary tests is required. That totally makes sense because again, that helps me to improve the overall process and at the same time, fastening the testing activities. So I think that pretty much straightforward picks up the odd one out very well. The right answer here is C, tester XYZ is struggling to find defects. The test design training is required for this resource should not be the point raised during retrospective meeting. Well, moving on to the next question, we have question number 11. It again talks about the similar fashion of question, that is, which of the following is not a principle of continuous integration? Again, sometimes, when you look at some of these kind of very, very straightforward questions, you should start thinking yourself before looking at the option that what is continuous integration? What all things you have learned in the syllabus? And then you should start looking at options, because by then you would already have the answers in your mind and you will be very, very precise to pick up the right appropriate option. So to avoid going wrong in these contexts, you should just recall your knowledge, your memory about any particular topic before you look at it. Again, given that it is a word not, you should pull the answer which is not the one. Okay, so let's exactly see the options here. Option A says continuous integration helps to build changed software regularly, including testing and deploying, and in an automated way. Of course, that's the right answer to be talking about continuous integration. So this is a principle of continuous integration, and builds are done at least once per day with automatic deployment and executions of automated unit and integration test binded together as a single pipeline, right? B, continuous integration allows new builds to be available frequently to testers and stakeholders. Of course, because it's continuous integration and it's frequent, like every single day there could be multiple check-ins done. So continuous integration allows for constant availability of an executable software at any time and any place for testing demonstrations or for internal education purposes. While talking about C, continuous integration helps to identify new integration defects early and makes the analysis of new defects easier. Of course, because it's too frequent and it just happens bit and pieces, it helps us to identify defects much earlier, as in when the code is checked in. So the continuous integration practices generally enables developers to integrate their work constantly and test constantly, so the errors in the code can be detected rapidly and much earlier in the life cycle. I think we just left with one more option to talk about, and looks like that should be the answer. But still, continuous integration ensures that testing of builds is done manually. I think that's where you should stop talking about it, as this generates more reliable results than automated scripts. Though the sentence looks very meaningful, that humans cannot be replaced by robots, but when we talk about a process, we talk about a methodology, there is a meaning for it, and we should abide by that. Agile recommends maximum automation so that you can do more in limited time. And in that context, testing should be automated at the unit and integration level to allow for quick feedback on the quality of the build. And don't forget that it could be meaningful at the acceptance level, but not at the continuous integration level. So the context was continuous integration, and we do it for unit and integration. So in that context, this is not the valid point. So put together, the right answer here is D, continuous integration ensures that testing of build is done manually, as this generates more reliable results than automated script, is not a principle of continuous integration. Well, moving on to the next question for the day is number 12. Which of the following activities would a tester do during release planning? Now again, talking about release planning, we must think about a lot of things which happens during the initial phases of the project or for a bigger timeline, right? We have two types of planning to recall. We have release planning, we have iteration planning. Release planning is for a longer duration, like 6 months of time, which consists of multiple iterations. Each iteration could be between 2 weeks to 4 weeks of time, and you may have around 7 to 8 sprints for a particular release. So of course, release planning has different assets for a test engineer to contribute, and iteration planning have different characteristics for a tester to talk about. All they're asking you here is, again, what would be the activity of a tester during the release planning? So you need to pick the odd one out. So we have the options as A, produce a list of acceptance tests for user stories. I think user story is a very concrete thing, right? Very simplified work item, and that gets discussed as a part of iteration planning that is not visible to you at the time of release planning. So that's not something what we do during release planning. B, help break down user stories into smaller and more detailed tasks. No, not at all. This is also a part of the sprint planning. You know that the stories are further going to be broken down into simplified tasks. Then it is again a part of the sprint planning itself, because user story itself is a part of the sprint planning. Then breaking them down further would be a part of sprint planning as well. Even if you don't have a context with you, right? You can just commonly apply the logic. C, estimate testing tasks generated by new features planned for this iteration. That is all about, of course, iteration planning again, because estimating the work happens during the sprint planning and not during the release planning. On a high level, you can do estimations, but what are we estimating? The task. That means something what you derived from user stories. And last but not the least, we are left with option D again. Support the clarification of user stories and ensure that they are testable. Exactly true. Testability of a user story being created can be defined at that point of time, that how we will make sure that user stories what will be defined is clear enough and testable, that contribution can be done during the release planning itself. And this is one of the key activity taken directly from the syllabus. So again, insisting on the more you know about the syllabus, the better your confidence will be about answering a question. So the right answer here is D. Support the clarification of user stories and ensure that they are testable. Not acceptance test derivation, not the breaking down a user story into task, or not testing tasks to be generated, like estimating them, right? So that's the answer. Well, moving on to the last question for the day. Of course, we got the next one, which is question number 13. What is the most appropriate explanation of a user story? So this term is more about definition of user story. So this is very straightforward K1 level question what you have, and you just have to define the best, right? Most appropriate. When they use these words, that means you may have partially correct or partially incorrect answers. You need to be very, very extra cautious to pick up the most relevant answer. Option A says an artifact that the tester must review and sign off before testing can begin. Contradiction. One, of course, it is an artifact that the tester must review, but do not sign off before testing them, right? So testers do participate in creation of the user story, right? But they don't sign off as a part of before testing it. So this is not the most appropriate definition of a user story. B, an artifact used to detail only the functional requirement of the system. Hey, that's where the traditional is different from agile. In traditional, we used to write separate documentations for functional and non-functional, but when it came to user story, we write a common paragraph, short paragraphs, which includes every parameter of a functionality or a feature, like functional attributes and non-functional characteristics as well within the same story, if in scope. So the user story should include both the things. So that's again not the most appropriate definition of user story. C, an artifact documented by business representative to help developer and tester understand the system requirements. Looks so obviously correct, but if you pay attention, the user story is written collaboratively, not by one person. Okay, so look at this, right? Sometimes you may think C is absolutely right. Come on, boss, I should go with it. But no, though you know that requirement comes from customer, but as per the principles of Agile, a user story is a collaborative writing activity. That means all these guys, developer, tester, business representatives, and stakeholders, anyone else, should be present together while defining the user stories as per the rules. You don't have to follow your company protocols, that what happens in your organization, what happens in your company. You have to stick to the syllabus. What syllabus teaches you is the question what you will be asked in the examination. Well, that's why C is incorrect. Now we are left again with one last option, D, an artifact written collaboratively by developer, tester, and business representative to capture the requirements. I think that's what we were just justifying you. And in that context, very straightforward. The right answer here is D, an artifact written collaboratively by developers, testers, and business representatives to capture the requirements. So again, I think on a very quick note, echoing the point again that you have to stick to the syllabus at any point of time just to make sure that you don't get diverted. And organizations and industries can have different practices than defined by Agile Alliance or Scrum Alliance. Though, these bodies do define that what exactly it is. But at organization level, you may have some kind of deviations. So please stick to the syllabus to be more precise with your right answer. Well, that's all from this particular tutorial, team. Should you have anything else, feel free to comment below. I'm always there to address your queries and answer them well. Till then, keep learning, keep exploring, keep understanding the context. Thanks for watching the video, team, and happy learning.